Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution, sponsored by Jointflows. Today we're joined by Hector Forwood, the founder of the Revenue Syndicate and the founder of Flooencer as well as an investor in many other companies as well. How are you today, Hector?
Yeah, good. Had a strong start to the year. I'm excited to see if I can maintain progress.
Amazing, amazing. For some of our listeners who might not know you, um, give us the lowdown. Who is Hector? How have you got to where you've got to today?
I guess some spark notes is started my career in sales. So I worked my way up through Cognizant through being the founding SDR there and ended up opening an office in New York. Then decided I wanted to totally lose my mind and become a founder. And then started two different companies. One failed after 6 months, one failed after 2.5 years after raising about $1 million. And then my third one seems to be going much better. And then in tandem, I started the Revenue Syndicate with John Eilert and Misha Jessel-Kenyon, and got about 700 to 800 go-to-market leaders co-investing into early stage startups together, because about 7% of investors in the UK have only ever worked at a startup, which means most of them are investment analysts or investment banker backgrounds. And so we thought we want to actually be able to add significant value to the companies that we fund, including Jointflows. So
That's right.
yeah, I describe myself as a bit of a, let's say, a generalist. Like I can't code, but I know how to no code things together. But my background
Yeah.
sales, but I spent so long doing all these other projects that have picked up a few different skill sets, which is both a good and a bad thing. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. I love that. And we hear about all the glory of these companies and startups that are flying and just killing it. People love talking about that, but it's not often people want to talk about, hey, I had this company collapsed after 6 months. This one didn't work out after this, that, and the other. And obviously, as someone who's a founder of the Revenue Syndicate as well, you're around a lot of different startups as well. What do you see as you're just jumping straight into it, what do you see as the common kind of trait between companies that don't work out? Like, why don't they work out?
Oh, good question. I think the thing that I'm beginning to see as a trend is, and this is something that I got wrong myself. As soon
Mm.
as people stop communicating, it's because the founders are in their own head, and that's when they die. Paul Graham actually wrote a really good essay on this on Y Combinator. You can just Google "How Not to Die" Paul Graham, and I read it frequently. And
Mm.
it's basically, I remember when I stopped emailing my investors frequently, and it's because I was in my own head. I was worried about competition. Things weren't going the way they're meant to. And so no one can help you if you don't ask for help, because they don't know. The other thing that I think is a really big theme, they don't fail fast enough, which is, again, another very cliche term, but it's true. If I gave you a set of 5 tasks to do and
Mm.
you didn't do any of them within a week period, I would say that you weren't engaged or trying. And the best founders might do 2 or 3 of those things because they can't do all 5. Maybe they don't have capacity, would have made mistakes and then learned from them, changed it, and made it better for the week moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you detect that during the investment process? Because you obviously have very limited access to, the founder's background, and how do you have a set of questions, or do you have a framework you use to detect whether this is going to be a good funding team or a bad one?
Yeah, so it's I'd describe it a bit like dating, right? Because you've got to have you we pick companies based off a deal matrix framework. So things like why now? It's the timing in the market, right? The size of the opportunity, and let's say some more conventional questions. Then we really try to dig into the motivations of the founder, because when you meet a founder that says something like, I'm fund or I'm doing this company just because I want to become rich, and that's my only motivation. Okay, for some people, I would say maybe 5% of founders that works. And
Mm.
they're typically the repeat founders who've done it before that can get away with that mentality. trying to understand if they really care about the problem that they're trying to fix. And the fact that they've gone through, going to steal something from Andreessen Horowitz here, but something called the idea maze. So the idea maze is this concept that if you have an idea, that you've walked down all different avenues of what that idea could become and look like over a extended period of time. And so if I ask you a question and you're able to respond to it, let's say you're building an email sequencer, and I said, oh, have you thought about A/B testing? And then the founder says something like, yeah, I've thought about A/B testing, and then we use machine learning. We're going to benchmark the A/B test and start optimizing to send more emails to A rather than B. I can tell that that founder has thought about A/B testing, and not only that, they've perhaps thought 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations further than that initial feature that I might have said. And that's one of the reasons that I personally just really like chatting to founders like you guys, is because you're typically usually more creative and more excited about what we're doing and have these big ideas. And I think the only other thing that we really dig into during that evaluation process, other than let's say the conventional pieces, do we really believe that you're able to execute the first year? And what I mean by that is, first year is the hardest one, in terms of, most people sacrifice going from, let's say, like 100+ K salary, depending on the seniority of the individual. Obviously, there are people that start up straight out of uni or even maybe in uni. But a lot of the people that we found are typically much later on in their life. And those individuals, to see how they cope with being like, okay, I'm going to pay myself a 30 to 40K salary, keep burn low. No one's going to know of who I am. And I might have been selling my product and I might have been working for Google and everyone's heard of Google, but now I'm a nobody. And do they still keep going to events? Do they post every day on LinkedIn? Do they do the basics and the foundations right consistently over a period of time? And so those are a few other things that we're trying to pick up on during the process.
Yeah, and that's really hard. So I moved from like a 200K salary to literally 30. And there's other strings attached. So there's family, there's this, and it's funny you say this because I'm very much an SDR now. Like, and I'm quite proud of it. But you know what I mean is you've got different hats, and then one of them is creating the software, so that the creativity side of it, but also the technical side of it. And then there's all the stuff that you would do if you were day one in a sales job as an SDR. Really, okay, how do you build an audience? How do you create credibility on social networks? How do you use like influencer marketing as well? Like, but from your own brand. So do you have any advice for founders at this stage? So what do you start with? Is it LinkedIn? Is it the marketing website? Is it email marketing?
Sure. So I guess you mean top of funnel, right? Just getting conversations when no one's heard of you.
Yeah, you're day one founder, ex-Google, and you kind of have to start from scratch. Your brand doesn't mean much now in terms of, okay, who you can actually reach. So what do you do first to maximize your return?
I'm in a fortunate position where I've been investing in my personal brand for about 8 years now. And so I have, let's say, like 15,000 followers. Not all are, across every ICP, but I have a bit of a following, so I'd probably start there. But if I didn't have that, the next thing would be go to everyone that I know and say, hey, do you want a demo of this? And then record the conversations, try and pick up themes and the words that they said, and see if you can get them to basically sell your product for you or market your product for you. Make a distilled version of all of those conversations, and then repurpose that for email copy and also website copy. I would use something called carrd.co, which is a one-page landing page builder. Put up a landing page, and it's like $12 for the year, so that you have, let's call it a face, and all it needs is an email capture form.
Yeah.
I would start posting every day on LinkedIn. I would then use a combination of low code or no code tools to scrape email addresses of not the best quality data. I'd buy some email domains and do some email marketing. This is another thing actually that people forget is, okay, when you go back to, let's call it ground zero, you know, when you're in a large scale organization, you have Cognism, you have Outreach, you have Salesloft, you have all these crazy bits of expensive tech. The average cost per salesperson per head is something like it's between $1,200 and $1,500. You have zero money.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you fundraise a, you know, £250,000 or £350,000 pre-seed round, you can't spend that on a $60,000 piece of software.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the scrappiness of day one founders is really a unique thing to see about how people get over and work around these problems, as well as trying to build a product, as well as trying to get design partners, as well as trying to do, you know, Figma or whatever else, is how to get the conversations in the most cost-effective way possible. And I think that's the thing that I find really exciting, actually, is that scrappiness, and something I really enjoy personally is a problem. And I think the only other thing that I'd probably do is, this is one for your audience. No one ever asks at the end of a call, can I have 3 people that I should speak to now that I've shown you this? I haven't made a cold call since, I don't know, like 2018. Maybe I mean, I've made a few, but very typically I'll say like, hey, you look like you enjoyed the demo, or you look like you were really engaged in what we're building. It'd mean a lot if you had anyone in your network, or do you think anyone's a good fit that I can chat to? I'm ideally looking for 3 people. Is that okay? And most people say, yeah, sure, that's fine, and they end up giving 1. The occasional one will give 3. The only thing to note is you do have to be top of mind. So you have to remind these people to give you those leads over, I'd say, like a 4-day period. After that, they're not gonna bother acquiring people. But even if you get one more conversation, then you can ask it again, and then it's just a pyramid effect and it scales. And
I love
that's the easiest top of funnel hack ever, and it works.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. It's just one sec. It's just before you asked the questions. The day one at Jointflows, we had HubSpot, and that was the first time I saw a blank HubSpot in front. There was nothing. There was no deals. There was no data. There was no records of like whatsoever outside of the old HubSpot sample data, which obviously is dummy data. And it was very much like, I've never been in this position. Where do I start? Do I buy data to start with? Do I go with my network? Do I ask someone to give me a set of leads, or like share some data points, like whatever? And it was very scary because, okay, that's it. Like everything from that point onward is me, or like the team, essentially just layering information on top of what you learned in the past.
One of the other things that I think is kind of interesting is, because you start at this point of just let's say a blank slate. You know, you might have spoken to a few people about your idea and how to position your company, but you really don't know how someone is going to benchmark you. So like every sales call you ever go on, as I'm sure you know, the first thing people do is they say, okay, what tool is this replacing? Or like, what category is this in? And you need to unlock the specific set of keywords that differentiates you enough that a prospect understands how you are not the same as another platform. And also the set of words that is at least going to keep them engaged and willing to have a conversation. That's why you always start with your network, is because they're going to be nice. Well, by nicer, give more of your time. You don't want people to sugarcoat stuff. You want, as a founder, you want raw, horrid feedback. If it sucks, you want someone to tell you it sucks. But those individuals, you want to give you the foundational messaging that's going to allow you to build on top of that, and then ultimately find your route to market.
Yeah, absolutely. No, one of the things we touched on there was, you know, you go from having access to all of the tools to, you know, having very little budget to onboard any tools to help you achieve your goals as well. And I know that for me, every time we're talking about onboarding a tool, I'm kind of the guy in the team who's like, no, I don't know, man. Do we really need that? What do we need it for? And Mick's just like, hey, let's just sign a contract. Let's just go. Let's get started tomorrow. And it's really difficult because for me, I'm like, this is a huge gamble. I mean, even if it's like 4 grand or 5 grand for the year, I'm like, that's still a lot of money we could be using somewhere else, right? So how do you determine when you're early stage, where do you put that gamble? How do you determine what's worth the risk and what's not? Because we've made some investments in tools which, to be honest, haven't worked out, and we've made ones that have as well. So it's a bit of a learn.
I think everyone does that. Like I wasted what was it? I think it was between, let's say, 2.5 and 5K on something called Dream Factory, which is not because the service was bad, it's just because of location. It was in Shoreditch, I live in Wandsworth, it's like an hour and a half commute, and it's basically high-end video production. And I was like, yep, I'm gonna go up there every day and film some really good quality content, come back and release it. And I was just really naive. And I just didn't realize that so much stuff would pop up and get in the way. And that was, yeah, a huge burn, which was a mistake that I made, and it sounds like you guys have made as well. I think the only time that tooling is appropriate is when you have a refined process and you know how to do it manually, unless it's a total, like, AWS, you can't, host
Yeah.
cloud, but stuff that helps you be more efficient in particular. Those tools you have to have ironed out your initial process, and then think, okay, well, I'm writing a lot of emails manually. I want something that can at least create snippets so I don't have to retype or copy and paste the whole bits of text. And then it's just about those efficiency gains. And I think what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, I think we have this problem, but they haven't even started doing that problem yet. And then they'll look for a tool for it, try and buy it, and then implement it. I'm kind of curious, what was your, like, let's call it week one tech stack? What were the things that you like, I need these things to help us sell or scale?
So
No, God.
yeah, so well, all the stuff to host the website and the software, obviously. But from a marketing and sales viewpoint, we had a CRM. We very early on implemented Gemini, like to your point about, okay, we're gonna need feedback, we want to record it, and we want to start finding patterns within the feedback. And then a couple of things we invested in early on as well. The first one was Cognizant, because we needed that extra layer of data that we couldn't get, and it was too manual to for us to have a yield on the activity as well. So Cognizant for that is perfect. And then we invested a little bit, we invested £80 in a couple of microphones, and that's it. So we then had the podcast. So the podcast was a huge part of what we do in terms of brand and awareness. So we'll go on to like LinkedIn marketing and influencer marketing later on, but like that's 60% of our activities is creating this brand. A lot of the time we go into meetings and people think we've got 10 people strong marketing department, and actually we don't have any marketing department at all. We're doing everything ourselves. So we did this. We invested in a tool which we had really high hopes for, like leveraging investors' networks. Didn't work too well. So yeah, we're trying to get a tooling which is more geared towards warm leads as opposed to entirely cold ones. And so far, I think it's working out. Like, obviously you'd always want more coverage, but yeah, this is what we started with, and then we play around quite frequently with free trials and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess you've also got the unfair advantage of being able to use your own tech as well, right?
Yeah.
That's a bit of a bonus.
Yeah, so on the converting, so that's for the coverage, but on the converting side, we just use Jointflows and HubSpot in combination. Jointflows does all the internal, external collaboration, so like digital sales rooms and then mutual action plans, both internal facing and external facing, and then and HubSpot feeds that data.
Yeah. I had a question for you, Hector, around as you scale a company and you're looking to make your first real hire, where ideally do you feel that hire should be? Who should it be?
I kind of have the philosophy when it comes to hiring that you should only hire when you're at capacity and can't handle anymore. I think if you're a two-person team, there's two different ways you can go. One is what I think is the right move, and just having let's call them an all-in-one, where they're essentially like a founding member, but they're multi-skill setted and they can just do a bunch of stuff, and they don't have to be experts in necessarily any one of them. Or if you've ever heard the term T-shaped marketer, you know, when someone has like lots of specializations, but they're really good at content or really good at PPC or something like that. Basically that, but at the founder level. So they might be really good at sales, marketing, product, everything else, but a deep specialization in sales, which is very contradictory to what most people think, which is you should start isolating roles and, you know, making, I think most people recommend that you invest in marketing first, and then potentially an SDR is typically what I see companies do. But I think it really depends on the values of the founder. Like me personally, I would argue I'm too creative. I get really excited by shiny objects, and I'll just run over it to the distance and spend way too long thinking about something. And so for me, I need someone who keeps me focused and says, firstly, sanity checks me and says, do you really want to go and spend a whole day thinking about how to scale XYZ? And has enough, let's call it financial acumen or business acumen to be able to interpret the data, or at least know the metrics that we should be looking at when evaluating a project. And then the other thing is just hold me accountable, which sounds weird that you'd hire someone and not get your co-founder to do that. But I'm currently a solo founder, so I'm not opposed to having a co-founder or something I'll think about. But yeah, for me, it's just about someone who can basically crack the whip. But I think most people would probably invest in. I mean, before we start talking about this, we were chatting about different top of funnel things. So it sounds like you guys want to hire an SDR. So go do that. And I think that's what most people end up starting with as well for a founding employee. But it could really depends on stuff like your CAC and which you might not know yet, depending on how long the company's been running. But you know, if you're selling and Winning by Design has some great collateral on this, by the way. But the revenue bow tie, if you to be able to build a pod, which is one AE, two SDRs, and one CSM/AM, for you to be able to get that model to work based off current salaries in the US, you need an ACV of about $15,000 minimum to be able to make that whole pod operate and scale effectively. So if you have a product where you guys are license based, right? So if your ACV is you know, I don't know, 200 plus salespeople on Jointflows, what was it? It's £50 a month, so 200 times 12. So like 120K. Okay, so if you're selling to 200-person teams, you could easily do that. But if you're only selling to 5-person teams or 10-person teams, then you probably got to start looking at, okay, well, we need a growth manager or someone who's really good at digital marketing and like hacky, get us in $3 CAC, and then go from there.
Yeah. Perfect. And you mentioned obviously earlier on that you've had a go at starting a couple of other companies as well. Were you a solo founder in those instances as well, or was this with a team?
No, the first one I had a team, so the reason that one died was because during the 6-month period we had an idea, we were getting feedback on it. It's actually Hoist, which I've now released myself because no code is a thing. So one founder, that was it. I didn't spend enough time interviewing my co-founders. So now I spend a lot of time just asking pretty personal questions and really kind of digging into their psyche. One of them had a baby and was like, I can't, afford to have a newborn baby and not have a job. Totally fair enough. Then the other one, his dad started a company at the same time and then convinced his son to go work with him. So then it was just dead in the water. The second time, I had two technical co-founders. One specialized in data, machine learning, and the other was both of them incredibly smart, like much, much brighter than I am. And the other one was a full stack developer. And I still have yet to this day to meet anyone as talented as that developer. And also just a super nice guy. But those two, when finding them, spend a lot more time vetting them based off my previous experience. And then we just started on the journey. And really unfortunately, OpenAI came out with GPT and totally ruined that business.
yeah, as many others, I'm sure. And what's the adjustment been like going to become a solo founder then?
I think for me, it's the focus piece. Focus is power, and you've really got to isolate the most important problems to fix first. Just let other stuff burn, and it's really easy to do stuff that you enjoy doing. So me, for example, I quite like operational design, thinking about how data moves. I quite like building websites. I quite like doing modeling and becoming an Excel warrior for a bit. But if I go through those examples, right, website design, actually, once it's built for your first year, probably don't need to touch it again. Maybe one or two changes based off the messaging. Being an Excel warrior, if you haven't got money coming in and you haven't got customers and you haven't got people to talk to, what is the point? Like I could put, I'm going to be a billionaire by 2025. And that's something that really annoys me about pitch decks as well, actually, is that stupid market size slide where everyone is like, yeah, my total addressable service market is like 500 billion. And if I capture 1% of this, I'm going to be the richest man on the planet. I don't give a shit. Sorry, pardon my French, probably not. I'm very passionate about this slide in particular. What I care about is I care about how you're going to survive the first year, the first 2 years. Okay, fine, right? Like that you might have a big market to go after, and I can see that from your competitor slide and a combination of how much ARR, MRR they're doing. Then I know there's a market there. I don't need to know that there are all these crazy metrics. I care if you're going to survive the first year, if you're going to get to profitability, and that's it.
Sorry, Hector, you did a post about, so anyone listening to this, please do follow Hector on LinkedIn. You made a post about this, which I've bookmarked, shared with the team, and I think it was a few months ago. You said, well, most of the investors we hear about, founders, they get the pitch deck wrong. It's not about the time, the SAM, and how much 1% of an infinite market is worth. Is how much money do I need to survive the first year, and then how do I build up from this?
Yeah, exactly. When one of my mentors told me that the only time you should ever care about market size or product market fit, either of those terms, was Series B. Until you are even close to Series B, it is just not worth your time thinking about. Yeah. And so as a solo founder now, all I think about is, how can I get the next customer? How can I grow this? Okay, I could be doing things better. I'm sure if I invested some time thinking about processes or automations, I could do those things better. But until you get to default alive, which I think is, gonna quote a lot of YC terms here, but yeah, until you get to run profitable default alive, like nothing else matters. It's all just distraction. It's all just noise. Another mistake that I'm really guilty of, which I now coach a lot of, I do a lot of advisory and consultancy stuff, and some of it is to do with CEO psyche and their mental confidence and willpower. Because being an entrepreneur is like being in a really big storm. Like you put your head up the water, then you get hit by a wave, and then you go back down for like 3 or 4 days, and you come up and you might get a small win. And learning how to harness the moments where you're above water and repurpose that into your business is ultimately what makes it successful, as well as being able to pull yourself out from when you get hit by a wave.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that is the most important, and again, the mistake I made is just ignoring what your competitors do. Like if they raise $20 million, I remember getting really upset about it and really in my own head about it and being like, well, why didn't I get that fundraising round? Or they've just got these new customers. Well, actually just focus on your own stuff. Again, like the chances of you coming, unless you have a very, very niche market and the market isn't that big, then, or you have really long sales cycles, and enterprises do a lot more due diligence on the kind of softwares they acquire, but don't give a rat about anything to do with your competitors. Just focus on your own stuff. Just focus on your customer. Just be obsessed about giving them the value and delivering what you say you're going to deliver them.
Yeah.
Again, don't worry about competitors till Series B. Unless you start losing deals to them every single time, unless they come across them every single time, okay, then you should consider thinking about them and dedicating more brain space to it. But the amount of founders I speak to where they're like, oh yeah, I saw they released this feature, I'm going to go tell my dev team to do this. Is something I did. Every time my competitor released a feature, I told my dev team to go and build it in a 2 or 3 week period. That was totally the wrong approach. What I should have been saying is, well, customers 1 to 10 in cohort 1 really like feature A. How can we make it better? What are they saying to us? Rather than freaking out about what I saw on TechCrunch or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing this. How are you doing for time, Hector? Do you have a
I'm
stop?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Would I like to keep the conversation going? Can you tell us a little bit about the LinkedIn influencer marketing world? Like for us, it was like one of the very early days initiatives was, oh, we need to be on LinkedIn. We need to create a brand. We need to be able to build credibility through that. And you're obviously in a business where you kind of enable this at scale as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about this market?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that after my previous venture failed, I took 6 months doing some consultancy and licking my wound, and I have my own process for kind of validating and ideating different ideas, and arrived on about 6, then narrowed it down to what it's now Flooencer. And one of the things that the way that I approach finding ideas and finding companies is what problems do I experience and what problems can people I know potentially experience. And so one of the things that's really difficult is, okay, I've now got a bit of a brand. It's not huge, but by any stretch of the imagination, but it's bigger than a lot of people's. And okay, how can I facilitate that in a way that can create more value? So I think last year, I won't name the company, but I got paid about $2,000 a post from a company with 15,000 followers. The only reason, in hindsight, I realized now was because this concept of business influence and marketing, it's always been in B2C, but it's never transitioned in B2B. And this company that I did it with was one of the first companies to pioneer it. And so it was like the Wild West in terms of how much you could get paid for certain stuff. Now, unfortunately, it's a bit more structured, and you need about 50,000 plus followers, and also a lot of it depends on your audience. I've spoken to one influencer who is followed only by CISOs, like chief information security officers, famously difficult people to reach, and everyone's trying to get their email address and they can't, and the phone number. So he only has about, let's say, 2,000 followers, but all of them are CISOs and really high engagement. He's like a cybersecurity consultant who gets paid like $3,000 a post, just because his audience is so incredible. Unfortunately, salespeople are, and including myself, which is my background, quite loud, and so there are just reams of sales influencers, absolutely reams. So the amount that they can ask for a post is less. But I think buyers are just frankly just really pissed off. What I mean by that is, if you think about how traditional buying processes work, I do 32 touch points. I book a meeting. I speak to an SDR. I receive 32 touch points. I get a meeting. I speak to an SDR. They qualify me and ask me a list of questions. Bad practices mean that they don't fill in their notes. I have the A at the start of the call ask me the same set of questions. I just told the SDR. Sit through a 30-minute demo just to find out the pricing. if I then go, you know, internal, do the negotiation process, do we have a tech that does this already? Procurement, legal, yada, yada, yada. Then I get to the point where, okay, I need this software, I buy it, I go to their CS team, have CS meetings. Then after that, I some other person, account manager, I get introduced to. So I spoke to 4 or 5 people just to bloody buy a piece of software. And buyers are just really pissed off, frankly. And the other issue they come and counter with is there are now. Have you looked at how many things do sequencing on G2 Crowd? It is ridiculous. There are nearly 1,000 different companies that can offer you email sequencing at wildly different price points, and they very rarely have good differentiating factors or features that mean they are actually a different company than just your base level of sequencing. And so what you're happening is you have 2 different factors here. One is they're just pissed off in general, and then the other is they reach there's a really good book called The Jolt Effect, but it's the justice of indecision, and so they're lost. They don't know what sequencer to go for. They're afraid of making a mistake and committing to one in particular. And so what it ultimately boils down to is I was like, well, the people that really influence these decisions are either internal or external. The external ones are subject matter experts, thought leaders, or people who are, you know, posting different hacks and ideas about a particular subject area. And so you build this level of trust with your influencer that you may follow, or 3 or 4 of them. And so when they start posting about a potential product that might be in your buying range, you think, oh, okay, I've read this person's content. I trust them. They're a subject matter expert on email or of revenue architecture. I'm going to purchase, I don't know, reply.io. And then the next bit is, okay, well, I might want, let's say, like 10 people. So who are Sendozo, right? Katie Penner has recently set up Sendozo's Flooencer program. I spoke to her the other week, and she is firstly amazing, incredibly passionate, super lovely individual, but she's built this exceptional program basically with just Excel spreadsheets and also personal relationships that she's had. And in a month, she's already had incredibly successful metrics just off recruiting these influencers to partner with on their brand. And so I thought, well, if I could build all the infrastructure to do all of these different things and help people and help build the success that she's had in a scalable fashion, I could do 2 different things. One is I can get really low cost MQLs in comparison to traditional ads, especially if no one's ever heard of your brand. And 2 is I can help people monetize their content. Like, I've been writing content for 8 years, and it was the first time last year that I've ever been paid to do content. And it made a huge difference. Like, it was a total of $6,000. And when I was earning, yeah, as you said, like first time founder, 30K a year for 3 years, that meant a lot to me. And depending on what stage that you're at, yeah, maybe you want a long-term brand deal. Maybe you're a more established influencer and you want, I don't know, like 150K is kind of in the region of the top end individuals that we work with. And so it really varies. But I think that's ultimately where we're moving, is putting buyers in a position where they feel confident because someone they trust is talking about a particular product they're evaluating, and they can chat to the influencers about it. And then the other is basically just removing all the fluff and allowing people to make that decision for themselves and leveraging influencer connections.
Yeah. And whenever I speak to anybody about like influencer marketing and this kind of space, the topic that people discuss a lot is, how do you actually measure a return on this? Like, how do you know that it's worked, right? So just because someone's made a post on something, it doesn't necessarily mean it has directly impacted a conversion. What's your thoughts on this, and how do you get around that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one key difference to highlight is there are, I don't know, got to be 200-300 B2C influencer marketplaces, which is Instagram, TikTok, whatever else.
Yeah.
I could pay an influencer now on TikTok, if I create an account, $500 to post about, let's say, like lipstick. That lipstick, I get 0.1 cents per sale that I give to the influencer. And that's a really easy transaction. The difference with B2B influencers is typically they're much longer term partnerships, because it's not an impulse buy credit card purchase. It is it's a long buying cycle, multiple people. And so the best influencer programs, from what I've seen, they'll actually have, okay, well, we have our, let's say, top of funnel influencers. Then we have our operations influencers who can talk about the implementation and how it impacts the organization and everything else, not just the value propositions of that company. And so you're actually put them into, okay, revenue generating influencers and then pipeline progressing influencers. And I think that I haven't seen a company do this well yet. And that's something that I'm hoping to facilitate, is this idea of, that's why our strapline to influence your pipeline is, it's not just the top. You can move deals all the way along depending on who you work with. And it's those long-term partnerships. And another one, people don't use their customers as influencers as well, which I think is bizarre. You want your customers to be shouting about your product. And okay, maybe you don't have to incentivize them in the same way as in, I don't know, cost per click or like number of impressions. Sorry, I realized I've gone off on a tangent here about measuring.
No, go for it.
That's good.
It's good. It's all good.
And so when you get to that point of having these long-term partnerships across your sales cycle, so I always recommend, people always ask us like, how long should we partner with these influencers for? Is like, how long is the sales cycle? 6 months. Okay, well, you should partner with these guys for 6 months then, because then you can maintain that brand and authority all the way through the funnel. And that's I think where we're really going to start to see really successful marketers use our platform to get MQLs and ultimately revenue. In terms of the metric side, really simple one is just like affiliate links. If it registers in the CRM, it's a very easy direct correlation between the MQLs. If you were doing a, let's say, more generalist campaign, you can look at website traffic that comes from LinkedIn, net off the difference, and also the conversion rates. So let's say you get 10,000 more eyeballs on Jointflows, and then the conversion rate from sign up to demo rises by 0.5%. You can basically say, okay, the impact of this campaign generated this MQLs based off this approximate number of impressions. And we also track all these metrics and give it the marketers a dashboard, so they'll be able to see a lot of the value we're providing too.
Nice.
Love that.
Yeah, very powerful, and definitely where the market is going. Just last question before we wrap things up, Hector. Where's LinkedIn going? Because I want to be a voice on LinkedIn, and I think that it benefits me personally, but also the Jointflows brand by proxy. But you also hear, especially over the last few weeks, LinkedIn has become Instagram or like whatever. I do believe, like, I think if anything, I would almost be tempted to put into an employment agreement that part of the job is to build a personal brand, which requires you to post on a daily basis. But what's your take on the direction of LinkedIn from your point of view?
I think that I hear a lot of similar stuff. Is like, okay, well, the quality of content is decreasing because more and more people realize the power of social media as a channel. And I totally agree. Like I quite, because of Revenue Syndicate, I often look at like funding data, seeing what kind of areas have an explosion of funding. Yeah. The amount of employee advocacy platforms that are coming out this year is unbelievable. We'll start seeing that tons more people will start posting. The issue, I think, derives from this is lazy management and leadership and lazy marketing teams, where they just say blanket to everyone, you need to post every day on LinkedIn. But if I'm SDR fresh out of uni, I don't know what to post, or I don't know what resonates with people. And I think there's a huge lack of support for helping employees who don't necessarily feel as comfortable creating content to produce good quality content. And so while I agree it's a good idea to encourage people, you've got to post every day on LinkedIn, you need to also create a social selling academy or buy one like this. What's the guy's name? Justin Welsh is obviously, like, everyone rants and raves about the guy. I've never bought or looked at much of his courses, but there's loads of personal branding experts on LinkedIn, things like that. And it's basically just about teaching those people how to make good content, and then you'll improve their quality overall. But at the moment, this is such a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on at the moment, that they're just like, you've got to post. And so you just have people just putting out total garbage and writing stuff that is let's say actually too personal, and then it becomes like Instagram, or then it becomes like the amount of pictures like, this is what I cooked on the weekend. Be like, okay, well, you're a VP product at a 500-person company. I don't really care that you eat sea bass on the weekend. I care about how to do a product roadmap. And so that's an education gap that I think will take 6 to 12 months to correct itself. In terms of where it's going in general, I don't know if you've seen what's happened on other social media platforms, but there is going to be an influx of people to LinkedIn, and I've read a few things about what they're planning to do, but I think we'll rapidly start seeing more growth on LinkedIn. I think we'll start seeing a lot more people realizing the value. So for example, like Snoop Dogg, right? No one knows that he's actually one of the most successful investors of all time. He's got his own investment fund, and they are really good. They have one of the best returns ever. And people like that, or like Rihanna, for example, raised $350 million recently for her lingerie brand, and is like an incredible marketer. And I think what we're going to see is those individuals, I don't know if we'll see them on LinkedIn or not, but we're going to see this different persona of like their entertainment career versus their business career, and see how that transpires as well, which I'm quite excited about.
Amazing. Well, look, Hector, it sounds like we could speak to you forever. It's been really, really insightful and really enjoyable as well. But we do unfortunately need to wrap up. So we have got our traditional final wrap-up question, which is, for your whole career to date, what has been your best memory and why?
Ooh, I like that one. I didn't know that was going to get asked. I thought it was going to be something like, what's your favorite tool or something like that. Favorite memory. I think my favorite memory in my career was so a bit like with this ideas stuff, right? I whenever I meet anyone in any department in a company that I'm working at or advising or consulting for, I'm like a yes and person. And I remember being in a meeting with all the heads of department, like VPs, CXOs, and we were talking about, I was the most junior person in that room by a significant margin. And I did the whole, let's say, half-day strategy day, and then went back to my, let's say, my day job selling. And by the end of the day, I had the VP of customer success, the VP of product, and the VP of operations all send me individual emails asking if I go work in their teams.
Amazing.
And it was just really cool that I think I was 26 or 27. It's just really flattering that people who knew a lot more than I would thought that I'd fit their team. And I just thought it was funny that I could have gone in loads of different directions. And yeah, that was probably the win for me.
Nice.
Amazing. Well, look, it's been really, really great having you on. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast. Until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.